There we go. Okay, now.
We are broadcasting?
Yes.
We are, okay. All right, at 6:31, calling to order the December 1, 2020 meeting of the Southborough Board of Selectmen. All members of the board are present. And first order of business is reading Governor Baker's prologue. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Southborough Board of Selectmen will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. And with that, I will now call the meeting to order. Hi, everybody. You don't have to unmute and say hi. I'll assume it. Our first order of business then is public comment. And I do not see any hands raised. So we'll move on to our scheduled appointments. And our first scheduled appointment is one of our series of updates by various boards and committees in the town. And tonight's first of three is the Municipal Technology Committee. And I believe Mr. Probst has joined us. Hi, Matt, how are you?
Great, thank you.
Just a little bit of intro. What we've been asking is, number one, the whatever you want to tell us is fine in terms of what you've been up to and what your plans are and the like. But the two primary things we'd like to hear about are goals that you've identified and are pursuing during fiscal year 2021. That's number one. And number two, any issues that you've encountered that you want to bring to our attention and that we might be able to weigh in on or potentially even help out with. So with that, I will give it over to you. And again, welcome. And we look forward to hearing from the Municipal Technology Committee.
Great. Thank you, Chairman Haley. And thank you for the invite to spend a few minutes with you tonight. I'd love to spend just a couple of minutes highlighting some of the things that the Municipal Technology Committee has been working on and where we are, and we can then brainstorm about ways that we can collaborate in possibly getting the Board of Selectmen help with some of these items. I think there's four key areas that we've been working on, focusing on recently. The first is, it started as simply a documentation issue. We started several months ago with our town technology specialist, realizing that the current documentation on the town systems and servers and technologies, needed improvement. And we've had it on a back burner, but obviously about a month ago, that project was rapidly accelerated due to the unfortunate move of Mr. Laflamme to another opportunity he had, which is great for him, obviously sad for Southborough. So over the past month, we've been assisting him with some documentation, basically putting ourselves in the role. If we were to step in that position, what documentation would we need to see there? needs to exist so that we could, basically, or whoever is his successor could maintain continuity of service. So that's a simple thing, assisting him over the past month. There's still plenty of work to be done there, and we're hoping that obviously whoever serves as his successor will fill in the gaps and work to finish the documentation, so that we don't have this case again in the future. It's actually part of our cyber resiliency plan to have necessary documentation in place. Second area, which is kind of interesting, is we've been decided on our monthly meetings to invite one for each and every month, invite one department head to join one of our MTC meetings to discuss with them their current needs, their current problems, their current challenges with respect to technology, as well as what their strategy is, because we want to fold these in to the 5-year municipal technology command, basically strategic technology plan, which our committee put together and maintains. So over the past few months, we've invited a few department heads to join us, and we'll continue doing that over the course of the year. Which leads us to the third area of our effort, which is around the 5-year strategic technology plan itself. In 2020, but by the way, one of the things we do with this plan is present it at town meeting, or present some of the key findings at town meeting. Obviously, we did not have an opportunity to do so in 2020, and we didn't do its proper justice in keeping it up to date. But I'm very glad we had a gap in our committee filled recently with the appointment of Mrs. Varner, and she's agreed to help drive the drafting the plan moving forward, or at least driving it and driving the discussion around it in our meetings. So that strategic technology plan includes things like cyber resiliency planning. And it's kind of interesting, over the past month, we've seen with the transition or preparation for transition from Mr. Laflamme to a new person, the importance of having a resiliency plan. Luckily, in this case, we had the person who is still available to help the transition. But part of the resiliency plan needs to be just in case, for whatever other reason, we need to be prepared as a town, just in case services and individual humans are no longer available. We need to make sure that we are prepared for whatever case. So we will be incorporating our learnings for the last month of what happens, and hey, at least we have a month to prepare here, into our cyber resiliency planning, as well as, of course, our desires to improve town security. And the things we've learned over the past month have been inclusive of needs to improve security on town systems. Another core component of our strategic technology plan is around moving away from legacy technology, shifting away from legacy traditional, we saw 1990s-esque on-prem servers and legacy systems, more towards current generation resilient cloud services that are redundant and so forth. And once again, over the past month, we've seen it highlight the importance of that, because we have to be prepared for, just in case a person is no longer available. It emphasizes importance of having 24/7, highly reliable, highly scalable, resilient services out there. Last part of the strategic tech plan I want to share is about the importance of engaging citizens. And so we're putting our first thoughts around surveying citizens about their experience with town technology. And as part of this, we decided, rather than ourselves being alone in creating a periodic citizen survey, I've reached out to a few department heads, several department heads, and asked them about the idea of, hey, if we were to put together a survey for citizens that's periodic, say twice a year, would they be interested in participating? And we have fairly strong interest across different town departments to joining together and put potentially a town-wide citizen survey and becoming a more data-driven town. So it's in its very infancy, but once we have a draft, I'd love to share with the Board of Selectmen and get your thoughts on that. Final thing I want to share tonight is one thing we've been working with Tom on or brainstorming around is helping town employees as well as citizens improve cyber hygiene and cyber security. So the idea is we'd be very happy to help put on webinars or Zoom sessions for anybody interested, including citizens, and maybe have some focus on employees, different ones focus on citizens, on just general good cyber hygiene, what to watch out for and be suspicious of emails and when to forward messages and things that it's just basic hygiene that it's helpful for all of us to review periodically, just as a service to the town, because you can never be too vigilant and nowadays with all of the threats that are about. So those are the key areas I wanted to share, and so would love to field any questions or thoughts on these topics.
Great, thanks. That's an ambitious agenda for a year. So I compliment you guys on that. The idea of inviting the department heads is just an absolutely terrific one. I know, and I would have suspected if I didn't know that like in my world, there are different levels of comfort and expertise in the technology. Somebody who went to school to be an X, Y, or Z didn't necessarily go to school to understand the intricacies of technology, but the fact that that your committee is reaching out to the department heads and it sounds like doing everything you can to make all our technology across our departments as solid as possible is just that's all of the things you went through are interesting and exciting, but that's the one that really caught my attention. So kudos for that. And with that little comment by me, I'm going to start going around, and I'm going to start with Ms. Braccio.
Great, thank you, Matt, for being here. It was a very informative presentation, and for us people that aren't as techie, I understood what you were saying, so I appreciate that as well. I think it's great for the citizens forum, or the questionnaire that you're going to do. I think that's great. It's always good to hear positive feedback from the citizens on what we could possibly do better with everything. So I appreciate everything you're doing. I think the 5-year strategic plan is wonderful. I'm glad that Ms. Varner was a nice fit for the committee as well. So please keep up the great work and let us know if there's anything that we can do to help further, as Marty said, the pretty interesting year that you have ahead. So thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Ms. Malinowski.
Thanks, Matt, for being here. I do have a question. And I don't know that this has come up, so maybe a hypothetical question, but when you have department heads come ahead in front of you and are talking about, manual workflows that they're doing or tasks, do you have anybody on your committee that's looking at streamlining processes and looking at software solutions that may be applicable to that department and possibly others within the town?
That's a great question. We have, when we ask department heads to come for us, we don't ask them to prepare anything, but we generally ask them to basically think about what are their key problems, technological or not, what are their challenges, how are things going in general, and then, of course, Tom has kept us generally up to date, but we like to have a direct interface to the department heads. I think it's something we can definitely improve on. And we have asked sort of detailed questions about what current software they're using. And this is something that is, I think, a general theme we're getting as we approach the different departments. Like each department, of course, has their own effectively help desk software, right? And their own way of interacting with citizens. So citizens, when they interact with the town, they feel like they're interacting with completely different, entities, right? We
Yeah.
sort of have a unified website, some ways no, but everyone has its own effectively help desk, its own, some cases, ticketing system or not, its own way of interacting, and it feels very disjoint. So I think this is definitely an area we can improve in terms of how citizens, interact with the town and how the departments themselves, can improve. Part of the challenge we have is, of course, each department has its own unique software and its own unique services. So, the family social services, they have HIPAA compliant software they have to run for keeping track of their appointments, etc. And of course, each department, right, fire has their own software. So by necessity, there's not like one single software necessary suite that can cover needs of everything. But I think there's definitely plenty of opportunities for improvement in terms of that particular area. Because far too many processes we have even today is we don't even have software for it. It's just email conversations. It's not even a ticket. So if it's email, then we have no ability. For those on the call and those who are aware, traditional service desks or service organizations like town departments or any company you interact with, if you just use an email interaction model, that email interaction model doesn't give you the richness that you can have by having a ticketing-based software. So ticketing, you can keep track of, response times, satisfaction levels, historical flows. You have much more visibility as opposed to just using traditional email. So I think that's a key area we can improve on as the town is moving towards for each of the service desks or service areas of the town, improving how we handle those through technological means. Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. I do have a follow-up to that. So if a town department is looking to implement a new piece of software, whether it is coming out of the operation budget or getting funded by a grant, does that get vetted through MTC for implementation, understanding what it takes to maintain the software, do updates to it, that sort of thing?
I can't say it's been done consistently, but Tom has in general, but yes, it should be. So it should be vetted through MDC. And Tom has, we have partnered with Tom for doing so for the past couple of years since we've been in existence. And so we've appreciated the opportunity of providing feedback. So for example, we provided feedback and review and participating in demos of the permitting system. We had discussions on the new rec center software, et cetera, and provided feedback on that. So that was good. There's definitely opportunities for improvement. We have ideas for how to, we've had ideas to improve things. Some of these things we're obviously limited on budget for, and we can only do so much given a certain amount of budget. So there's always trade-offs. But yes, those things should go through MDC for review and ideas. And it's not just necessarily software selection, it's also how it's configured, because you can have a given piece of software and configure it multiple ways. And there's better ways, more secure ways, and then less better ways, right? So, yeah.
Well, and I'm also curious as to whether the software that's selected is really the best option for what they're what the goal is. So I agree. I think there's a lot of room for improvement here. So it's definitely something that I'm interested in watching your committee look at. Thank you.
Yeah, and let me respond to that. I completely agree. And so one thing we want to move forward on is making sure that before we choose to move forward with any piece of software, we make it very clear, and we have it very clear documentation of what the requirements are and what are the relative priority of those requirements. That's vendor independent, like, you know, and that it's software independent. So we know very clearly what are our goals and what are we trying to do. And then, and only then do we start looking at what are the available pieces of software that might meet those needs. And I can't say that it's been done completely. Most recently, unfortunately, with some of the software, the selection that has occurred, we were brought in at a very late stage, and it's almost like a decision had already been made because that was it's the de facto software, and we just got to use it, and so forth. So I think there's definitely opportunities for improving that. Yeah.
And is it up to the department head to bring you into that process, or is it the townhouse that does that?
So far, it's been Tom, who's been the IT department, who's brought us into that process. We hope though that each department head would recognize opportunity and come to us. Certainly feel free to come to us directly, either directly or through the technology specialist. But yeah.
Sounds like we can improve on that then too.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Chelsea. Mr. Shea.
Matt, thank you for joining us. Also want to echo what I think is a very positive step in involving department heads in your meetings. I think it's great to keep that communication ongoing, and glad to see that you're doing that. I guess the one thing, if you could maybe touch on, and certainly not going to get solved right now, there's been correspondence bouncing around recently about the capital item for servers. And I guess, is this something that is going to continue to be a discussion among your group? And are you waiting for Tom's replacement to look into this and advance this further?
Great question. Yes. So Tom put that in the budget. So we have monthly meetings, and Tom had to get a budget out there, and so he put a line item budget before we were able to meet to discuss that particular line item. That particular line item is definitely something we are highly interested in discussing in our committee. And in general, our consensus is we have to be very cautious about that particular item. Basically, how much do we continue to invest in what we might call legacy technology versus moving forward with the town on cloud-based or software as a service technologies. There are some trade-offs that we need to discuss. And it basically comes down to there are some particular technologies that have to be run on-site, on-premise, typically around public safety, right? If your internet lines go down and the cloud, even though it's great, is not available, you still want to be able to field and have your police and fire be available. So that's going to be the sort of the theme of our discussions. So we're supportive of, we talked to Tom and said, look, it's fine, leave it in there as a placeholder for now, but in our next meeting, in our December meeting, we want to have a deeper discussion of that particular line item and make it basically drill into it and identify truly what's needed to move the town forward into sort of meeting our 5-year goals of hopefully having as little as possible on-prem, because you can only do so much on-prem.
Yeah, no, thanks for that input. And again, what I didn't know if there are state regulations that also come into play about records retention that may impact that decision as well. So sounds like you're.
We'll definitely look into that, and obviously records retention might be different depending on if it's public safety or not. But independent of the records retention, in general, we would consider software as a service and cloud-based services, especially when you have redundancy there, to have better capabilities around records retention and meeting government regulations around it. But that's something definitely we will look into.
Great. Thanks. Thanks again for joining the meeting.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Mr. Stivers.
Thank you. And thanks, Matt, for the overview. My guess is that to get caught up on all the areas you mentioned will be a mere several $1 million or so should be no problem to get that caught up. Delighted to hear you're making progress on updating the strategic plan. What's the estimate in terms of timing of having another version of that available for folks to look at? Ballpark.
I'm guessing we can have a draft ready. We're planning to discuss that in our December meeting and coming up in a couple weeks, and then hopefully having an early draft by January. So by our January meeting. So in terms of ability to share a draft, be happy to share something in January.
Good, good. I look forward to seeing that. I mean, it seems to me that along the lines you're talking here, that the strategic plan could be an important sort of benchmark as the departments look at technology, and the new technology manager, however that works out, could use as a guideline to say, here's what we're headed toward in terms of overall structure, and generate some pressure on the organization to make investments in the right direction generally. And I think that could be a very helpful thing to get people more aligned longer term. And again, I think we as a Board of Selectmen can play a role in that in terms of reinforcing through Mark and the technology manager, both budget process as well as longer term planning for technology, to say all these things department wise need to be coordinated, reviewed by a broader set of eyes, as opposed to go out and buy your own software to solve your immediate problem kind of thing. So I think we can all work together to make that a more coordinated process and wind up with a much more robust solution, and maybe save some money in the process as well. So I think we're headed in the right direction, and appreciate your and your committee's efforts to keep moving there. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree that that's one of the things we're hoping to do as part of the strategic tech plan, is that there should be sort of general themes as part of a town-wide strategy that we're trying to conform to, like, single sign-on across all departments. Today, there's no single sign-on. Every application the town has, there's separate credentials. And so security things, redundancy things, and to no fault of, Tom's, there are plenty of opportunities, we call it, for improvement, where we've been, I would say, more as a town reactionary. So I think you say, Sam, that each department basically comes with their, here's the software I want, and let's just drive it forward. It's more of a tactical decisions. Mm-hmm. So we can definitely move towards some unifying strategic decisions that are cross department, rather than each department sort of having their own independent plan that may or may not fit with others or be complementary. Right. And I think there's lots of opportunities for budget savings if we're actually combining the strategy between different departments. Yeah.
And I think there's an interesting customer service dimension here too. The town actually sits on a lot of interesting data that you can find if you know where it is and you go into the right system and dig around a bit. But I think that, again, out of the strategic plan you're working on could come a plan for making town data more accessible to citizens in terms of what kind of questions citizens have, and can you get to it through a common front end, for example, to find easier ways to navigate to places that people are interested in. So if the MTC and the new technology manager can put together the vision of how that ought to work, then as new pieces are added, they can be built consistent with whatever that vision is. And ultimately, you can't do it all at once because of budget constraints, but ultimately everybody's working within the same structure. And so when you get to the end point, voila, it all fits, as opposed to, oops, we've got 23 separate systems that don't talk to one another, which is sort of where we are today. So again, keep up the good work and look forward to getting updates from time to time. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Matt, I'm going to let you go in a second. I'm just going to, just a very quick question about the citizen engagement. One of the things I'm always curious about is that when the town communicates, whether it's Twitter or emails or the like, is part of the citizen engagement going to be to sort of get a sense for how effective electronic communications are in lieu of, the old brick brick and mortar, letters and things like that. I mean, 20 years from now, I suspect these conversations aren't going to be had. We'll have completely adapted and nobody will be getting anything in paper anymore. But I'm curious if that's going to be one of the things you're going to try to look at as part of the citizen engagement.
That's a great set of questions that we should be asking. We will make sure that is included. In fact, I'm very happy to, once we get closer. So basically, the next steps on the citizen engagement survey is we want to make this something that is periodic and easy for all citizens to do, maybe once every 6 months or once every year. So we're basically collecting questions. We will be collecting questions from the various different departments and simply aggregating it. And we want to give each department sort of basically a budget of X number of questions. We'll provide examples of what we've seen in other towns. But I think that from a technology standpoint, absolutely. Effective communications, what are the most effective communications from the town means, whether it be social media or other, what do citizens prefer? That's definitely something we'll include.
Great. And the last thing I'll say is that I think we are always impressed when we bring in, it's one of the reasons we do it, bring in the various boards and committees and have them give us some detail about what they've been up to. I will say you guys might be in first place right now, again, in terms of the ambition of your agenda for 2021. And Godspeed. It's great stuff and it's incredibly important stuff. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
All right. Good night, Matt. And we next, I believe, should have Catherine, who's going to be very upset with me suggesting that any board or committee could be more energetic and doing more work than Trails.
Good evening.
Hey, Catherine, how are you?
Doing well.
Okay, my quick intro. Let us know what you've been up to. Anything you want to talk about? Specific emphasis on goals that you've set and are checking off for fiscal year 2021, and any issues that you want to bring to our attention that maybe we can weigh in on, maybe even help out.
Yeah.
And as you might have heard my little monologue. I've had the pleasure of watching some of your meetings, and the amount of work you guys are taking on is pretty impressive. And I keep waiting to see Tom Marcoullier out, banging a post into the ground. So yeah. So with that, take it away.
Great. So I did prepare a presentation, so I'm going to share my screen. I will make this quick, but it does say I'm disabled from screen sharing. So
Hang on 1 second, Catherine. I'll take care of that.
Thank you. So while we're pulling this up, I thought it would be, I went back to our original presentation the Trails Committee did in front of the board, and it turns out it was almost 2 years to the date. So it was December 4th, 2018, which I thought was kind of interesting. Okay, so it looks like I'm able to do that, and let me know when you see a map of Southborough.
Yeah, all set.
Great, thank you. Okay, so as I said, I went back to the presentation that we did in 2018, and I wanted to tie it into what we talked about during that presentation as far as what we would be working on for the next couple years and see how it aligned, which was kind of interesting. So these focus areas that you're seeing now were the ones that we identified in 2018. So that's how I structured this presentation. So to talk a little bit about one of the things we wanted to focus on was outreach and awareness and increasing that throughout town. So what we've been able to do since we've, our last update was focused on website updates, Facebook updates, things like that. So since that time and our involvement with Heritage Day and such, we've been able to double our distribution list for the e-alerts for the news and announcements for trails. We installed 4 map kiosks at 2 parking areas and created 2 parking areas rather, with the help of the Eagle Scouts and DPW. And we collaborated also with SOLF and the trustees to get that done. We did some Burroughs Loop trail blazing. There was a grand opening in Marlborough. Some of you may remember that from 2019. And the committee hosted 2 guided hikes, and we had over 64 participants. Also during this time, MWA installed 2 Aqueduct Trail granite markers you may see off of Deerfoot or Ward Road. And we improved the signage between Parkerville and Middle Road, working with Faith School. They did the installation, and we had a generous donation from a resident in town. And then, as I mentioned, our Facebook page we created back in 2018. And since we've created that, we've, you can see the trend here. So we've been increasing our followers, and the total number might not be impressive when you think about the population of Southborough, but I'd like to focus on the trend. So we're trending in the right direction. And so we're really happy about that. And we're keeping our website update with trail maps. We've posted a second video, thanks to Luisa Vargas, who's also on the committee. This year, the Trails Committee was awarded a Choate Fund grant to install Southborough Trail signs on our map kiosks and to build monofilament fishing line recycling receptacles. And we were commissioned to install 2, but because of some savings, we were able to install 4 throughout town. And we've actually had people use those. So that's really exciting. And even if they don't collect as much fishing line as we would like, we feel the awareness is really something important throughout town. So this year we also, we were approached by Central Mass Regional Planning Commission about they're creating an interactive online regional trail map. So we shared some, we connected them with Sudbury Valley trustees, and they're going to be featuring the Sudbury Reservoir Trail, the Burroughs Loop Trail, and the Aqueduct Trail, along with the town forest. So that's pretty exciting. Then related to our trail stewardship efforts for the last couple of years, we traditionally participate in the Earth Day, but this year we had to cancel that because of COVID. But we were able to do some trash cleanup. The committee got out there, as you can see in this image here, picked up a lot of trash, and that was at Route 30. We got a lot of fishing line. I'll tell you, Isabel Murphy, she's a huntress, and she was out there getting a lot of that fishing line, and around Deerfoot as well. So we did some tree debris cleanup and trail maintenance with the Scouts in 2019, and in 2020 we had to do it a little different. So what we did was we approached the Scouts and asked if we could get a parent-child unit and just have them work together, and we had a volunteer, June and Alex. They helped us clear the Sudbury Reservoir Trail off of White Bagley. And then a big project that we worked on was reconstructing the Bay Circuit Trail connector off of Route 30, and it's also the Burroughs Loop. And we worked with the BCT volunteer group to do some of the technical work, and then we worked with a community work party to finish some of that up. We also developed a maintenance plan this year, and we're in the process. We've submitted a CPA funding application to help close the gap for the Burroughs Loop and Aqueduct Trail as well. So educational and training opportunities, we're always looking forward to taking advantage of whatever's out there. So in 2019, there was an International Trail Symposium. So I attended that with a supportive recreation department, thank you. And I attended a trail building workshop. And then later in 2019, DCR hosted another conference. They do those every 2 years. So and another trail reconstruction workshop. Those are really great for skills building and things like that, and networking. Also attended the Leominster Trail Maintenance Workshop this year, looking to get more skills so that we could help build out the BCT trail. And then we worked alongside the volunteers for the BCT who are trained by Appalachian Mountain Club in trail building. So that was really great. And just most recently attended the Conservation Commission's GIS Day regarding mapping and things. And that was a great resource to find out. We can use that for abutter notifications and things like that. So community engagement is really important. And in addition to working with the Scouts and doing community service days and incorporating residents in some of our activities, we also, as I mentioned earlier, had some guided hikes, and we had about 64 participants in 2 different hikes for the grand opening last year, the BLT, the Burroughs Loop Trail. We stay connected on social media by highlighting a lot of the Scout projects or other trail trail happenings. This fall we had a fall photo contest, which was our first and fun, and Barbara Dyer was the winner of that contest, and she is now featured on our Facebook cover page. So this is a couple pictures of the groups that we had for our hike. And then something that's really important for the committee is developing the partnerships to leverage the different town entities, the knowledge, the resources, and networks. So we, through our participation in the Boroughs Loop Committee and the Master Plan Committee, we're able to develop and strengthen our relationships, not only with the surrounding towns of Westborough, Northborough, Marlborough, but also within Southborough. So from the Master Plan Committee, we have exposure with all of the boards in different committees. So that's really helpful with synergy, understanding what everyone else is doing, how we can leverage, how we can work together. So that's helpful. We always and have continued to have a positive working relationship with DCR and MWA. And, you know, most recent initiative, because of these relationships in the surrounding towns, we're able to approach those communities and ask them to write letters to DCR, just as the board did. Thank you very much for your support there. So we have received letters from MAPC, Sudbury Valley Trustees, Marlborough, and Southborough have all sent letters to DCR encouraging that public access plan. And we're awaiting 3 letters from Northborough. That would be Open Space Conservation Commission and Trails Committee, and Westborough, that they've all agreed to do to kind of help us push that along. And then this just highlights some of the other synergies we have, and appreciation for all of the community outreach and the different departments that we work with. We couldn't do what we do without everybody else helping and sharing insight. So many of you know our current project is the Peninsula Trail off of Route 30. This is a link for 2 regional trails, the Boroughs Loop Trail and the Aqueduct Trail. Currently, we're waiting on a public access plan, and that's in DCR's hands. And we've been told the plan's been written, it's just on hold. There was a new commissioner, then COVID hit. So we're hoping that this will happen in 2021. But part of what our initiative is in reaching out to the communities is to encourage that to move forward. In addition, we've talked a little bit, some of you may remember this slide from 2018, but these are some of our challenges, trail connection challenges. We have Route 30 on the Southborough Framingham line. That Twin Arch Bridge is a historic bridge, actually, 1894 it was built, but it poses problems crossing that because that's where the trail comes over and connects to the Boroughs Loop Connector Trail. And then it'd be great if we could have access to CSX. I think some of you know the long story there. So that would be, instead of going across the causeway, we could perhaps share the railway there, but we have some challenges, obviously, with that connection. So what's next for us? Future trail projects and initiatives. The Peninsula Trail I just mentioned. We have some stairs that we'd like to build out on Route 30 on the opposite side along the Sudbury Reservoir Trail. We have another opportunity to build out a section of Aqueduct Trail connecting to the Framingham's Weston Aqueduct off of Pine Hill, which we hope to do next year, 2021. And then additionally adding interpretive signage and historical signage at key locations throughout town, mile markers for the BLT, working with other entities in town. I know making Southborough more walkable, connecting trails to downtown has been a big priority in lots of the surveys. We'd like to, continue to work with the boards and commissions and committees to add safe options for biking in town and participate in a future bike committee. That's for you, Marty. So the committee members, some of you may know, I'm the chair and I've been with the committee since 2017. Satyendra Sharma is the clerk. He's been also since 2017. Isabel Murphy, 2017. Louisa is 2018, and Tom joined us in 2019. And a big shout out to Tim, who we work with closely for recreation, from recreation. So that's all I have for tonight. And let me know what questions you have. I think specifically what I didn't touch on are issues. I touched a little bit on our challenges. I think our biggest issue right now as a committee is funding for oil. First of all, it's the public access plan from DCR. And then the second issue is funding to get the trail. We have some fencing and signage that we've put together. So we would, that's what we're working on now. So opening it up to questions.
All right, Catherine, thanks very much. This is Marty, and thank you for mentioning the bikes. And that is one of the things we're doing later tonight is talking about our goals for 2021. And that is one that is still very much close to my heart. I'm going to do just two very quick things, and then I'm going to go to Ms. Malinowski first. Number one, we being the Board of Selectmen, are meeting with our state rep and state senator on December 15th. And so, as I was watching your slides, and again, all of the work you folks are doing, it just strikes me that there might be questions, asks that you would like us to pose to our state rep and state senate. You don't have to go through them now, but keep that in mind. That's on for December 15th, and fire away I've got to think that both Representative Dijkma and the state senator are going to be very supportive of all of these things you're doing and have been. So again, keep that in mind.
We do have an ask, so I will reach out to you separate.
All right, terrific. And the second is on the funding, and it sounds like that you folks are starting to be pretty aggressive on the CPA side of things to look for funding. That strikes me as a very logical and appropriate source of funding for the sort of work you folks are doing in the trails area. And is that so? Am I right? Did I hear you right? That is an area that you folks are really trying to tap?
That's right. So we're in the process now. And so it's a little challenging because we were hoping to apply for the DCR grant, the Trails grant, right? That's also a logical place for us to seek money. But because we don't have a public access plan, we can't apply for the grant in 2021. So it's our 2022 goal to apply for that grant, and perhaps our CPA money could be used as matching funds. There's a lot of moving parts. The DCR grant is a reimbursable grant, so you have to pay up front and then get reimbursed, and you also need matching funds. So there's a few logistics that we're trying to work out, and we're hoping that the CPA funding could help us bridge the gap, assist with the problem, move us forward, any of those positive things.
All right, great. I'm going to go to Ms. Malinowski, and what might be helpful is to take down the slides now.
Okay.
So we can see everybody again.
Got it.
And I'm going to go to Chelsea. There we go.
Hi, Catherine. Thanks for the presentation. That was a lot of information. I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you and your committee for the hard work that you're doing. I'm seeing residents on the trails all the time, so I'm sure everybody appreciates all of your efforts in maintaining them and having people get out to enjoy. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chelsea. Mr. Shea.
Thank you. Again, no questions, but thank you for the presentation. It's good to see that your committee is so ambitious and is taking on so much. It's really good to see. Always look at your agendas as they're posted, and you've got a full slate of items to bring up at every meeting, and that's reflected, I think, in all the information that you've been able to provide in this update. And I will just let you know that one of the slides is out of date already. You have another follower on your Facebook page.
Ooh.
So
I encourage all of you, join us.
very good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Stivers.
Thanks. Thanks, Catherine. Great overview. And as always, you guys do great work. Follow up on a conversation with Marty. There are other things that the Board of Selectmen can do to be helpful, either in terms of coordination, for example, with other towns or other departments within the town. As you know, I actually sit in on a lot of your meetings, and my sense is you get good support from other town departments in a variety of ways. But if there are things that we might do to connect with our peers and surrounding towns with on various issues, I think that's something that I would encourage you to bring to us. And I'm certainly eager to help with that kind of stuff as well, because I think we got great opportunity to improve connectedness in a variety of ways, and you're making great progress, but it would be wonderful to find ways to accelerate that. And as you probably know, one of my interesting issues is pedestrian access across one or more causeways there. So I think it'd be great to find a way to be able to afford that. And that, to me, is a key link in the trail structure if we could figure out how to do that. So again, keep up the good work and let us know how we can help. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
And Ms. Braccio.
Thank you. Good evening, Catherine. Thank you so much for coming. You know, I sat through your presentation in 2018, and I have to tell you, you just knocked my socks off with this one. This was really impressive what you guys have accomplished since when you first came in 2 years. It's just outstanding. Kudos to you all. I know having the right people be on your committee and having the right enthusiasm to move forward. You're definitely a great leader for that. So I commend all of you for all that you've done. I do have a question for you. Actually, I got a phone call today and I didn't know the answer to it. So I'm hoping maybe you can answer it for me. So after like a storm that we just had yesterday and there were trees down all over town, is there a process that the Trails Committee has to check on the trails to make sure that there's, you know, no damage or anything prohibiting someone from being able to use them? It's a two-part, so I'll let you answer that one first.
Yes, that's a great question because I think of it every time there's wind. And because our street actually just lost another tree and we were out power last night for that reason. So I think of the trails often. But yeah, so we have an Adopt a Trail program, and our volunteers for that are, that's exactly why they're set up. So they're, you know, every couple of months they're surveying the trails, letting us know how things are going. And so I think one of the parts of the program we'd like to implement a little bit better and more thorough is to reach out after a storm to our volunteers and say, hey, let us know if you see anything unusual. We can also post on our Facebook page for people to, they will often report in that way. And we also have a link on our website to report down trees, and people have used that. And then the committee also is very active on the trails. And so we'll go out on the weekend and kind of survey. And we know the hot spots. There's a few special spots that like have fallen trees all the time. So yeah, so I appreciate that question. Thank you.
Okay, great. And the second part, I'm actually going to go to Mr. Purple on. This is a liability question. I was also asked about, you know, if a tree comes down or somebody falls because of a tree come down, who holds the liability on that? Is that covered under the town's policy?
So if it's, are we talking about a volunteer, a board member, somebody out there?
All of the above.
Yes.
How's that?
So yeah, so the town has an umbrella policy for liability. So anybody who's not specifically named would be, you know, covered under that.
Okay.
Mark, I also think that there is some, I'm not a lawyer, of course, but there's some protection under recreational assets. If people are using public recreational assets, then it's harder to sue whoever the owner of the property is generally. Now, that's not an ironclad exclusion for us, but I think that makes it easier for us to not be subject of a lawsuit if something that we don't reasonably control. If we're negligent, then that creates another issue, but that wouldn't be negligence typically, I don't think so.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So again, I always want to ask the question instead of giving the answer what I think is right. So I'm glad that I did. So, and also, Kat, one last thing for you is I'm hoping people are watching tonight and they were completely inspired by what you're doing. So what is the best way for people to get in touch with the Trails Committee to volunteer through, whether it be your Adopt a Trails program, which I love, by the way, or just, you know, to be involved in some of the amazing things you're doing?
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. So there's a number of ways you can, you know, obviously link to any of the committee members' email from the Trails website on the homepage. Our emails are there. You can also send us a message via Facebook. That's an option as well. And I think, you know, there's another link on our website page, but those two are the primary best ways to reach us, is Facebook and any of our emails.
Great. Thank you. So anyone inspired by this conversation, please feel free to reach out. And thank you again, Catherine. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So I do have a question. If I do have some specific liability follow-up questions that I've been wanting to touch base with, who's the best person I should speak with? Would that be you, Mark, to start? Okay.
I would start with Mr. Purple.
Great. Thank you.
All right. And well, we're going to let you go. I'm a regular user of the trails and they're in terrific shape.
Great. Can I just say two things? One is, first of all, thank you very much for the board support. I really feel like a lot of what we do, sometimes it comes fast and you guys are very responsive. You let us get on the agenda when we need to, and that's really helpful for us. So thank you. And I just want to shout out to the committee members, all of them, Louisa, Tom, Isabel, and Satyendra. Everyone is very committed to the Trails Committee, and we couldn't do what we do without all of us involved. So I just want to make sure everyone hears that the committee is really, I'm just very grateful to be a part of such a great committee with dedicated volunteers. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for
All
your
right.
time.
Thank you.
Good stuff, Catherine.
Okay. See ya.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. All right. Next up is Council on Aging. And it looks like, are we going to have just you, Pam?
I thought Doug Peck,
We're
our new
bringing
chair,
Doug
was going to
over
be here,
too.
but hopefully he will be joining us, but I'm not sure where he is at the moment.
Okay.
That's okay. I'm okay if you want to start or if you want to wait.
Yep, there's Doug.
Oh, no, his name just appeared on the screen.
And
He's out
Mr.
there
Harrington
somewhere.
is in the audience as well.
I'm sorry, who is?
Bill Harrington's in the audience as well. I don't know if you want to bring him over too.
Can we take care of that, Vanessa? There we go. All right, and I will leave it to the three of you to decide your own order. My quick little intro is, number one, thank you for being here. We're looking forward to hearing about any initiatives, work that you've been doing. Two main things that we definitely want to hear about are, again, goals, initiatives that you've got, particularly for that are ongoing or specific to fiscal year 2021. And number two, any particular issues that you are encountering that you want to bring to our attention that we may be able to at least weigh in on, maybe be of some assistance. So with that, I'll let the three of you decide who goes first, and I'll turn it over to the Council on Aging.
Okay, I don't know if nobody objects. I'm happy to start and have you guys chime in. Well, as you know, the Senior Center has two main parts to it. It's the part that people see, the real visible part of it. You know, the bus trips and the programs and all of that, all those types of things that we do. And the other part is outreach. That's kind of the behind the scenes part where we assist people, connect with people, help them out with anything that they need. The programs are also a type of outreach too. It's all about keeping people connected. And so it's been kind of a moving target for us since COVID started. It's been a real challenge. Things were, up until that point, things were going really, really smoothly. The programs, we've kind of brought in a new generation of seniors. That's always a transition. So we really do a lot of analysis of, what's working for us, what do people want? Because it is a different group of people. It's changing all the time. And this, currently there's a big volume of seniors out there. So we spend a lot of time looking at that. So when COVID hit, initially we had to do a couple of main things. One was to shut down all of our programs, and for the spring, which is our busiest season. There was just an awful lot of programs going on, a lot of things planned. It's our biggest season. So that was one of the first things we had to do, is shut everything down. We also had just put out a newsletter. So we had full registration for all of our programs. So we had to contact all of those people and let them know, that those things weren't going to happen. So we spent a lot of time doing that. Simultaneously, our goal was to reach out and contact as many seniors as we could to let them know that we were still there. If they needed anything, they could reach us right away. Kind of let them know what we knew at the time, as much as we could tell them. And so that was quite the big undertaking. We made between 500 and 600 phone calls. Because we felt that was our best way to really connect with people. We also did as much outreach in any other way as we could to make those connections. But with not being sure of, how many people had emails, and we wanted to just connect with everybody. We thought that was the best way. We did some mailings. We promoted our information and who to contact as much as possible at that time. So that was a real challenge to get the word out that, you just call the senior center and they're going to get your message right. We're going to get the message right away, even though we were home. And we were pretty much operating 7 days a week. So it was pretty hectic in the beginning, but those were the two main goals. As much as we have the programs side that we were concerned about, there was always that outreach side working. So we needed to get some programs and activities up and running the best way we could, while continuing to really reach out and react to the needs of the community. We did not have a huge amount of people contacting us for real support services. We were really surprised at that. So it was a lot of proactive activity going on. We were super fortunate to have the CERT team available to us, while kind of my peers were out there kind of scrambling for volunteers to meet those needs as they were coming in, like people needing groceries or different things like that. We kind of had a built-in system already to react to those things. So we were very, very lucky to have that. So if any issues arose, we could deal with them right away. So we are kind of working with a moving target as things progress. We basically, it was a little bit of a learning curve for us, like what to do next. Since we couldn't have anybody in the building, we couldn't do anything face to face. What do we do? So it was a little bit of a learning curve there for us with Zoom, how to set up a cable show. So we spent a little bit of time doing that. We actually rebooted some of the programs that we had to cancel and kind of converted them into the drive-through programs that you probably heard a little bit about. So we did a lot of that with themes. We put a lot of effort into that to try to make it as creative as possible. But that was part of a plan to connect through the programs. And what we've done and what we continue to do is use the drive-through programs, Zoom for a number of activities, educational programs, fitness classes. And as things progress, we added to that. So Zoom cable drive-through was our primary target as far as that, and still continues to be. We're expanding that, we're changing that. People are much better at that than we thought they'd be. Some things that really surprised me, and Bill deserves the credit for this. Dull Men's Group has converted to Zoom and has about 20 people every week that show up. As far as I understand it, there was even somebody was in Florida and connected. So that was, that did surprise me. I wasn't sure that was going to happen, but he successfully got that up and running. So real pleased about that. Real pleased about the response as far as we have a yoga class. We have a stretch class. We're adding a weight bearing kind of class. We're adding Qigong. So we're really expanding that as we go into the new year, just because the response has been good. The classes are full. The interest is there. We're not really sure about cable shows and things like that because there's no way to get reporting back on that. We've asked for feedback, but that is an outlet that everybody can see. You don't have to have a computer to do that. So at this point, we're going to continue those programs. There's a lot of some educational programs, some programs for legal services. There is entertainment, sing-alongs, all kinds of things. We're trying everything. We're kind of throwing it out there and see what the reaction is as far as that stuff is concerned. And as we progress, we worked with Emily from the Board of Health, what we can and can't do. So in the beginning, we started off with our raised bed gardens, which are out back of the senior center, because you didn't have to have contact. We had a walking challenge that people could do without being in a group. And we finally got the okay to let our Trailblazers group go out with restrictions and requirements, but that's been going really, really well. They had a hike today. They probably do something once a week, and they meet up and, they do have a strict set of rules that they follow. So we're doing as much as we can that way. So the program side of it is going well, but it's like I said, it's been a challenge to see what works and what doesn't work. So kind of trial and error on those things, but response has been really positive. As Lisa knows, the drive-through, when people come through, we make a really big deal. Like I said, it's about connection with people. I've got a pile of thank you notes on my desk that have come in from people that have participated in these programs. I wish you could see them when they come through. They're real happy to see us. We are happy to see them. So we're doing as much of that as we possibly can. And again, that's all about connection and outreach and, supporting people in town. The other side of the coin is that outreach piece. And that is something that a lot of people don't know about, don't think about until they need something. So we continue to remind people that we're there for them, to connect, with whatever services if they have needs. But we're being very proactive about that. We have a program called the Caregiver Meals Program, which is it's funded through the Southborough Community Fund, and it delivers meals every other week. It's not a nutrition program; it's an outreach program. They get a phone call every couple of weeks from Cindy, who's really gotten to know those people really, really well during COVID. Just to connect, make sure they don't need anything, make sure they're doing well. Lots of stuff comes up during those phone calls. Fortunately or unfortunately, when we were closed, we didn't send volunteers out. So Southborough Community Fund was kind enough to let us shift that money from when we were closed over to the program and add a number of more frail elders to that. So it's a combined program right now. And we just received $12,000 to continue that program kind of as is with the new people on there through the next year. So super lucky that they have been so flexible and easy to work with and helpful to us. So we have that, but then, we were kind of left with how do we connect and keep connected with this winter coming up. So like I said, it's a moving target. So we're trying to be proactive. We make a lot of phone calls every week, connecting with people. Cindy is working through that list, basically oldest to youngest. We've done mailings. We've tried to connect, but it's primarily we try to connect by phone if we can. And we started oldest to youngest. We're working our way through the 80s at this point to see what people need, see if they could fit into one of our other programs. The other way to connect for people that can't see us, basically can't drive over and do a drive-through event, it's kind of we call it a forget-me-not program, where we've been using one of the local bakeries, Yummy Mummy, to put together these small treats, basically. And like I said, we're working our way through the list. So we make phone contacts, see if people need anything, then let them know that a volunteer is going to come and drop something off at their house. And that's been like a super response. And the one that really gets to us is, you get them, people saying, so glad, I'm not forgotten. And that comes up a lot in those thank you notes, especially people that don't have a lot of family in the area. So we're continuing to add to that and do more outreach as we possibly can. The nurse has been really busy. She helps out Emily and has helped out, especially at the beginning of COVID. The other thing that's been really active with the nurses, we lend out durable medical equipment. And a lot of people have been ill with different things. And Leslie's been there for them to help them, connect with their doctors or, whatever they need medically. And like I said, durable medical equipment has been booming, I think partly because people have been having medical issues, but people have also been cleaning out their basements and their garages. So we're getting a lot of, shower benches and walkers and all of that stuff. So we have a really good supply of that right now. So that's been helpful, but I was really surprised that, how many phone calls we got for that. So it's been really busy. Again, it's all about contact with people at this point. I don't know if there's, any questions. You guys are pretty familiar with what we do. So I don't know if you have any questions for me.
Oh, we'll go around, Pam, and with both some comments and maybe some questions. I just want to see. I think did Mr. Peck leave? And Mr. Harrington is still there. If they want to. Oh no, Mr. Peck, I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong box. If either one of you want to weigh in before we start going around and with some comments and questions.
Yeah, I'll weigh in just very quickly. I mean, I think Pam and her whole team has been doing a really super job. I am on the board for Bay Path Elder Services, and so I get to see a lot of what's going on in different towns. I also work for a large home care agency that's based in Waltham, so I see what's happening in Needham and Newton and Brookline and various different places. And I think what we're doing is, equal to what any of the larger towns are doing. But our advantage is that Pam and Cindy and really know the people very well on a much more personal basis than you do in a larger town. And so they can adjust things very quickly as we go along. My main concern, if there is one, is while all the outreach is good, what we've really noticed with our clients and with Bay Path clients as well, is that isolation is very, very bad for your health. We have seen so many people go into decline, and once you go into decline, it's just so difficult to try to get that person back to where they once were. That's particularly true of anybody with, any type of dementia. So I think we have to very carefully work with the health department, and we'll also get notified by EOEA of when we can begin, not necessarily opening the building, but having events at the building or on town property where people can socially get together, even though they may be socially distanced. Just to see somebody in person, to spend a half hour with them or 45 minutes with a group really, really makes a huge difference. I can tell you that I'm out and about fair amount, although I'm very, very careful. But I know from the Dull Men's group that the Zoom makes a very big difference to people. When we were doing it in person, people were even really more engaged. I run another smaller Dull Men's group before the Dull Men's group, where we talk about a little bit different issues. But I know how much people really look forward to being a part of the group and just being able to talk and act as if things were normal. So we really have to be a little bit aggressive about how can we let people, how can we socialize more, particularly with the older adults. The drive-throughs are great, though, that's about probably the extent we can do this winter. But as spring comes, early on, we've got to really figure out how do we do this, because it's just really is so critical to their health and overall well-being.
Doug, I think we're going to roll out, as soon as we can. We'll work with Emily, and as things change, we have a plan in place to kind of roll things out. If things get better in the spring, hopefully, like you said, we can do some things outside. On the lawn, bring some fitness classes, do them outside, different activities in smaller groups. Peg and I were just talking about that today. So kind of bring things back, slowly, as much as we can, safely as we can, but maybe start with kind of the way things have been, shut down, bring it down. Maybe we can start with 5 people or 10 people and kind of build that back up. I know they're waiting, people are really anxious to get back.
Yeah.
We're anxious to have them back. But it's kind of, like I said, it's a moving target. I think as soon as we can do those things, we start slowly and try to get back to whatever normal is. I'm not sure when the heck we're ever going to have a bus trip again. Things like that. But Peg and I were addressing that today. As soon as we can do it, that's the plan.
Good.
All right, that's a great point. Mr. Harrington, give you the opportunity if you want. You don't have to. I'm going to take that as a no.
I just want to
So Pam, just very quickly with me, and then I'm going to go first to Mr. Shea. Number one, it is heartening and even inspiring to hear what with a closed building and with all of the restrictions that are perfectly appropriate for the environment we're in, the efforts that you all are undertaking. So you should feel incredibly good about that. And I walk by. It's on one of my routes. The senior center all the time, and believe me, those drive-bys are a lot more often than you may think they are, because I think 2 out of 3 times when I go by, there's some sort of activity going on there. So the second thing, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Shea, is just you may or may not have been listening. The first committee we had on tonight was the Municipal Technology Committee, and Matt Probst was talking about citizen engagement that they're doing on the technology front to, among other things, get a sense for exactly how far our reach is in terms of technology. And it sounds like that's something that might dovetail with the sort of efforts you folks are undertaking to on the outreach front. So I mentioned that again. You may have heard part of our discussion about that, but putting you in touch with and putting them in touch with you, it might create some good synergy. So with that, I'm gonna.
I agree.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I agree. I think that when he was talking, I thought that's somebody that we can reach out to that can really help us kind of capitalize on that, because it's not our strongest suit, and we're always playing catch up with that. And how can we get more people involved? Even with just Zoom and things like that, how can we educate people, and how can we, one of the biggest challenges, how can you bring somebody that has a computer that their daughter bought them that's sitting on the table and they don't use it? How do you bring the person from that stage to a point where they can use Zoom? And, maybe he can help us out. Maybe that group can help us with things like that. So I am going to reach out to him, and actually the Trails group, just to make sure that they're connected with our Trailblazers group. I don't know how connected they are together, but I think they can probably help each other with some things.
Oh, you're making me feel good about the 3 committees we selected to be here tonight.
That was great. Yeah, that was really helpful for us.
So
thank
all
you.
right, Mr. Shea.
As it turns out, a great combination to have for tonight's meeting. So I just wanted to note that how much I appreciate the comments that Mr. Peck had about the isolationism that we're looking at. And so my dad is in Shrewsbury and had participated in something comparable to a Delman's Club there. And we were just always encouraging, get out, do things, be active. And then this pandemic hit, and it's like a complete 180. It's like, no, stay home, don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Just stay in your house. And, it's just a complete opposite message to have to send to people, and for people to have to hear as well. And I know, one of the things that their group was able to do during the summer and through the fall, they would go to a park in town, and, rather than meet around a table inside the room, they, brought lawn chairs and sat out by the back of their cars in the parking lot, and we're able to get together that way. So
you're encouraging Bill to have not proper behavior. We worked with Emily, Lisa's laughing because she knows how he can be. We worked with Emily on doing things, and at the time, doing things in groups was not on the top of her list because things were so crazy out there. So not to say that Bill doesn't do things on his own, because he does.
And in no way, shape, or form am I encouraging, activities that don't, comply with other guidance that you've been given through our public health.
Well, that's okay. Bill found his own way.
Good. But again, it's just good to hear how well your department has been able to adapt to this whole thing. I think that everybody has had to adapt in some way, shape, or form, and Council on Aging has as well. And certainly it's encouraging to hear all the efforts that you are making. So thanks for
Thank you.
joining tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Mr. Stivers.
Thanks. Pam, Doug, thanks very much for the update. You folks do what I see as critical work here in town. I've been in the healthcare business for a number of years now and interested in terms of things that keep people healthy. And one of the things that we find is, in addition to reasonable medical care, a key factor in terms of people's continued good health is very simple. It's simply having somebody who cares about them. If they think that somebody loves them and cares about them and is interested in them, makes a huge difference in a person's ability to deal with illness, hardship, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that our senior center does a great job of reinforcing that for a lot of folks in town. So again, may not be as visible to portion of the population, but I think that's a key factor of community success here in terms of creating that support system and a sense of community, particularly among the senior crowd. So I think that's something that we need to continue to support strongly. And I am also delighted to hear, as an occasional participant in the Dull Men's Club, that the club is across state lines now. So there may be a federal law against that, I don't know. But I wasn't aware there were Zoom meetings, so I will work to connect again. So you need to publicize that a little more.
Yeah, definitely. We just kind of shifted over. We just transitioned from kind of Bill's version, the non-official version, over to Zoom. So that will be definitely publicized in the next newsletter, and we're going to get the word out.
I didn't see it on the calendar. That's what I keep an eye on. So
It's coming. We'll be in the next newsletter.
So anyway, again, keep up the good work, and again, let us know what we can do to be supportive, particularly during this time. Very tough, and I think a lot of people are having a hard time. So anything we can do on this dimension to help is something that's worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Ms. Braccio?
Thank you. Good evening, Pam, Doug, and Bill. Nice to, well, I'd say see you, but I see a blank screen. But I just wanted to share, hi, Doug. Nice to see you. That how grateful we all are. I mean, listening to you tonight and, you know, being able to participate in some of the drive-throughs and whatnot that you do. We are just so grateful what you are able to give to our seniors. I think your two greatest successes is a feeling of home and connection, which is something during COVID, Doug, you touched on it with the isolation, is so very key in what you're doing. And, you know, again, we're so grateful. We're grateful to the community fund for being able to fund the caregiver meals. You know, that's a lifeline. Things that you're doing are actually lifelines to people. And we're so very grateful for that. I thank all of you for what you're doing. I just have something for Mr. Harrington as well, knowing that there's Zooms for the Dull Men's Club. I haven't been invited in a while, so I guess I'll be expecting my invitation, Mr. Harrington, sometime soon.
Yes, you will. And
Awesome.
I'll send one to Sam too, if he wants to join us.
There we go. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And one last thing, Pam, you talked about the medical equipment that, you know, is donated. Are you running into a problem? I know a lot of people, like when my mother-in-law was alive, you know, we were able to utilize some of the equipment through the senior center. Are you finding an issue? Probably not as much now with space because the senior center's closed, but is that going to become an issue for you going forward when the senior center opens again, as far as being able to store all of this stuff?
I think we kind of managed the space really well. Leslie's got it really highly organized. So I think we have enough at this point, enough equipment, it fits. Yeah, if we had any less space, we'd have a problem, but it's working okay right now. So I think we're okay. Thanks, though.
Great. Again, thank you. Thank you for everything that you do. You know, you're a lifeline to so many in town. Just that I've seen through the drive-throughs, just that a smiling face, you know, sometimes that's enough. That's enough to make somebody's day. So
yeah, I appreciate that you guys understand that, Sam, you know, those comments. I mean, we are extremely fortunate that it's a town that we can make those connections with. If it was a bigger town or a different town, you know, we wouldn't be able to do that. So for us, you know, we're really grateful that we can do that, because that is the bottom line. It's, you know, people know that we care about them. And you guys care about them. And, I mean, that's the goal, is to get that feeling across to people and then go from there. So we appreciate all your help, and, we'll do anything to kind of connect and get people out. Just to give you guys a little bit of an idea, about how much people want to get out of their houses. We had over 150 people come to Shred Day. And those drive-throughs are running about, somewhere between 75 and 100 people. So it's, there's a lot of people out there looking to get out the door or connect with people. And just to comment too about our sign coordinator, she works for free. And she has seen since October through December 7th, all on the phone, helping people with their health plans and choose, you've seen a million commercials on TV, helping people sort through that and make those decisions. 150 people is amazing, never mind doing it over the phone. So she is just an incredible volunteer. We can't thank her enough.
Again, thank you again for everything you do. And Doug, it was very nice to see you.
All right, Ms. Malinowski.
Thank you, Doug, Bill, and Pam for coming to meet with us tonight. I agree with all of my peers here on their comments, so I'm not going to repeat them. But I do have, I think, a two-part question. One, is there a way, I get questions sometimes from residents, how can I help someone in town? Are there, whether it's in an emergent situation or, some sort of program that you're running, Pam, on a weekly basis. So that would be my first question. And my second one is, I think at the beginning of the COVID-19 situation, you were more in crisis mode and making sure you were checking with your more fragile residents. But at this point now, to tap into the isolation issue, which probably is impacting the majority of the seniors in town, is there a way that we could institute a program like Sponsor a Senior? And, you mentioned somebody needs help with their computer. I think every school-age parent in Southborough is now an expert with loading applications and getting Zoom done and, being able to multitask, that kind of stuff on the fly. So is there a way that you could, ask your population if they would be interested in connecting with a family in town on a regular, weekly check-in, monthly check-in, something like that, and see what their needs are if that just having that connection makes them feel connected to their community?
Yeah, we can, we thought about putting out a program like that. We've had volunteers offer. And at this point, we've been using staff, and we have a list of volunteers that we know really well. So that's what we've been kind of focusing on. It's something that we can definitely look into. The challenge with that right now is to get to know the volunteer a little bit. That has been my concern, is with the new people coming in. It's really tough for us over the phone to kind of get to know somebody and know for sure if they're a good fit when you're making, a direct connection like that. So we're definitely looking into different options and expanding any of those connections that we can make. We have done one-on-one connections when people call for, specific things. With our outreach coordinator, she does connect those people, one-on-one if there's a specific interest or need. We have done that before, but it's definitely something we can look into more. Like you said, there are people that really want to help. And I think we're at that point now where we can look into things more, but that is the challenging part. It would have to be done over the phone. It's unfortunate that we have to do it that way, but yeah, maybe we can do some things with some families too. We've been getting more calls like that. I think people have their kids at home and they're, really looking for their kids to get engaged, especially with the holidays and things like that. So just this week, I've had a couple of those phone calls. So yeah, I think we could probably do some work and move into the next phase with something like that. It's going to be a long winter. So I think that's a really good idea. Maybe involve the kids somehow.
That's what I'm thinking. Get them busy.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. So yeah, we'll
Okay.
probably talk more about that.
Yeah, and I'm your liaison, so we can
Definitely.
delve into that further. So I look
No,
forward
that'd be
to that.
great. I think
Okay.
that's terrific. I love the kids, and we needed Peg has 4 kids, and they're out of the house now. But we utilized those kids for many, many, many years, and her connection to people with other children that got pulled in. So, and the entire staff, all of our kids have been through it. So yours are just warming up. So
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Pam and Bill and Doug, thanks very much. Incredibly informative. And I said, it's inspiring the work that's going on in Southborough,
We appreciate your
in a lot of different ways, but particularly, focusing on the seniors. So kudos to you and all the folks you're working with.
Great. Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Good night. I'd rather be lucky than good. And it really is kind of interesting, the sort of interconnectedness of the 3 committees we had tonight. So maybe we'll see if we can keep that as a running streak. So, all right. On to item 3D, Town Administrator Performance Evaluation. And the materials, with the exception, and Brian, the additional paragraph, I don't know for sure, I suspect that was my mistake when I was cutting and pasting, that I cut too much when I was putting things together, so I apologize for that. But obviously it'll go into the final document and it'll be part of the complete record, that paragraph that was omitted. And with that, I look back looking for some sort of guidance for format for how these have been done in the past, but there wasn't a whole lot of guidance. Mark, you probably know better than anyone the last time there was a performance evaluation, but obviously that's something we're going to get better at. And the next one actually is going to be quicker because we're committed at this point to trying to do a follow-up, if that's the right word, as quickly as sometime in February. And Ms. Malinowski, you and I spoke. You're welcome to weigh in at if you want to in the whole process, but the written evaluations were all done before you were a member of the board. And while there was discussion and opportunity, if you wanted to submit something in writing, you chose not to, which is perfectly understandable. But that doesn't mean if you want to, that you can't weigh in tonight as part of the discussion. So my plan is to do this the way we do all of our items, which is to go around the table. I will start, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Stivers. I think that's next in order to start. And then Mark, I'll let you weigh in. Do you want to just wait until all 5 of us have gone and then comment and maybe have more of a full-blown discussion, or do you want to jump in after each of us speak? Do you have a preference?
No, I'll wait till everything's done. That's fine.
Okay. All right. It's interesting. I've received and I've given a ton of evaluations over the years. Lawyers, not surprisingly, love to do it. And when in terms of the folks that I manage and have to do evaluations for, the way I approached this was similar to that. And that is, I'm short on writing and long on immediate reaction. And that's why, Mark, over the course of the year and a half I've been on the board, if something comes up, I'll have a conversation with you. I get the sense that an awful lot of members of the board are similar to that. My overall impression is captured in both the numbers that are reflected in the chart, but also in my summary paragraph, which is, I'm impressed with the job you do. You know, it's funny, and I particularly noted this since I've become chair, that the town of Southborough threaded a needle, or attempted to thread a needle, when they created a town administrator position as opposed to a town manager position. And the one, it's kind of embedded in the written comments I have. The one thing I would say is that I would, and I suspect that the board would be supportive of this. I know I would. You know, just in some recent conversations we've had, I've said, you know, that strikes me as a purely administrative thing. That's something you don't need to ask us about. You don't need to ask legal counsel about. You don't, and I guess that I would encourage you to be more aggressive about that. And you know, and the flip side of that is be more aggressive about exactly, you know, what the powers and responsibilities of your position are. But the flip side of that is, I would also encourage you to look for areas where there can be initiative, and that initiative can be clearly traced to you. That this is something that Mark Purple decided was something worth pursuing. And you know, I could, off the top of my head, offer some items. As you know, in conversation, I'm never reluctant to do that. But I would encourage you to do that. As I said, I think that again, we tried to thread a needle with the town administrator position. I think we did a pretty good job of it. But I would encourage you to, as I said, there are powers and responsibilities that are and should be the town administrators, and you should feel comfortable undertaking those. Now, the other part of what I talked about in my written thing is it is very important not to ask permission, because I don't think you have to do that, but err on the side of updating early and often, rather than I'll wait to see how this may play out or otherwise. I think that's really important. I mean, that twofold. Number one, it gives us the opportunity to say, whoa, I don't think that'll happen very often, but there might be situations like that. But it's also, I think, for your own protection. As I said, not that you have to ask permission, but as long as we are being updated about decisions that are being made, initiatives that are being considered, and the like, then information is flowing the way it should. So with that, I am going to go to Mr. Stivers.
Thanks, Marty. Actually, I echo a lot of what Marty just said, in that as obvious from the rankings, my evaluations are more conservative than everybody else's, apparently. I actually took the frame of how I look at my own employees and came out with the conclusion that there is substantial room for improvement. I think that a number of the items on the list that I provided about things that I think could be done better actually fall into the category that Marty mentioned, the things that the town administrator, Mark, could actually take on himself. And again, I would strongly second the comment of keeping the board informed about what's going on with those things, and things that I think could be done administratively that could make a difference. And again, I refer to the list that I provided in a couple of places in there. But again, to me, the job is a difficult one. I certainly appreciate that. But I think the challenges and opportunities that we face could be better realized than we've been over the last year or so that I've been observing, and before that as a citizen versus a board member. I guess my bottom line on it is, I think that it's very important to take another look at this over the next 30, 90 days here, and have an opportunity to outline, to lay out some things here, some specific objectives that the board would like to see accomplished over that period. So we've got a more clear benchmark to say, are we making progress or not? And again, I provided some items for possible inclusion on that list. I'd be happy to participate in discussion of what other items we might put on that list. But it seems to me that the challenge here is to come up with a standard to say, all right, are we doing better? Are we headed in the right direction? And when we have to make a decision in April about contract renewal, to have a little more specific data on which to base that decision. So I think, to me, the challenge is looking forward here as opposed to looking backward and beating people up over that. But again, I think there's some upside that we need to realize here. So that's sort of my bottom line on it.
All right, order. Ms. Braccio, I gotta keep
Thank you.
the order I'm going.
Thank you. Just a few comments. One is it's hard to discuss a review now that started 10 months ago. We had gotten the initial email. So we're discussing Mark's performance from almost 2 years ago based on timeframes. So, and again, I'm not faulting anyone or this board with that. It's just, unfortunately, with COVID and everything that has happened since. So I just want to make that comment that, you know, this was a review based on February, or, well, because it wasn't a review prior, this was through technically February of 2020, which was when we were asked to start this process. So there is nothing that I have put in the review that Mr. Purple and I haven't discussed over time. I've found that, you know, we've worked into a great relationship, that as issues come up or questions come up, you know, I am fairly confident in being able to go to Mark, you know, and have a discussion, sometimes good, sometimes bad. You know, it depends. But, you know, I appreciate that relationship, and I think that that's important for the board for moving forward. I do think it's important, as in any job, is we would hold our department heads accountable too. I think goals are very important, and that's something that we haven't provided to Mr. Purple. And I think it's very important that we set the expectation, not just give him a review, but set an expectation of what we want to see from him, or what we would, like most of us, there's things that all of us can do to improve, and me included. So if we don't provide that information to him, I think that's important. And kind of playing on a little bit what Marty had said about the town administrator position, it's difficult sometimes as boards change and members change, what level of expectation the board has in decision making and getting information and the level of detail that they even want with that. So Mark, I give you credit for that, because that's not always an easy thing to do. You know, you finally get into a groove on a dynamic, and then an election comes, and you know that changes as well. I think overall, as my numbers said, you know, during the timeframes that we reviewed, you know, there were more positives than potential negatives. So again, I am always available, as you are to me, that if there's ever a question on anything I may say or whatever, I would hope that you would reach out. But we seem to have that level of comfortableness with each other that we can do that. So thank you.
Great, Lisa, thanks. Ms. Malinowski.
Thank you. So I chose not to partake in this particular review because it started in February, and I felt like if we're going to do another review in the near future, I wanted to have the timelines line up with the rest of the board members. So that was my rationale for actually not participating in this one. I do, however, have a few comments, as I did read through the packet that included all of your comments. I think in general, real-time feedback is very important here. And when we're doing reviews, I think it makes sense for us to look at the time period that we're reviewing. I think, you know, in the 6 months that I've been on the board, I think Mr. Purple has made himself available to myself when I have feedback from him, whether it be good or bad. You know, I think we always come to a common ground. So I appreciate the availability and the willingness to at least listen to what I have to say. I also think that we do need to set goals, and Sam, I think you alluded to this. I would actually suggest that we be prepared for our December 15th meeting to come up with a set of goals and vote on them, because I think we're doing a disservice to this board and to Mr. Purple if we don't give an agreed upon list of goals, especially if we're looking to start the review process again in February, hopefully have some sort of formal review prepared by March for his feedback. So I would suggest that we look at that. I think we also need to come up with a mechanism to give real-time feedback if it needs to be more formalized than what it's been. I think one of my concerns is that things maybe were not known, and so now they're coming out in this review 10 months later. So I think if we can improve on that as a board, then that would be helpful. And I think my next comment is having specific dates set now, so Mr. Purple knows what the expectations are for the next review date, and then when the feedback would start, and then actually given back to him, and then when the next review would be, so that way he can kind of understand what the expectation is. And the last one would be a schedule for all contract employees on when their reviews are, and us being more involved, because I think I'm concerned now seeing the feedback in Mr. Purple's review, and do we have some concerns in other contracts or contracted employees that we should be aware of now and have input into if we have some constructive feedback to give. Thank you.
Okay, you took the words out of my mouth. I had jotted down on my pad here, goals discussion, question mark, 12:15. So I have a feeling there's general agreement on that. Mr. Shea.
Yeah, and one of the notes that I had written down as well was goals, objectives, and certainly if Mark is going to be judged by goals and objectives, it's incumbent upon us to clearly communicate those to Mark, so we can have that known by all parties going in. And again, stand by the comments that I had offered. Marty, you're probably realizing this. I would think Lisa had as well, and I certainly did in my time as chair, but I think as chair, you used to have more frequent communications with Mark than not as chair. And, was always not hesitant to, push back on things, to give feedback to Mark, in real time. And I think it was easier to do so, with the frequent communications that we had. A lot of these, the comments that I had in this assessment was coming off of the initial stages of the whole pandemic where, Mark, we were probably talking 4 or 5 times a day, through weekends and all that, just as things were continuously changing. So, I think that there was a lot of good communication between us at that time. And I think my comments are reflective of, what I thought was a very positive approach that Mark took towards the whole thing and helping to get the town and keep the town prepared in the early stages of the pandemic. So, so I guess, don't really have much more to offer than that. I think the key thing is that, again, if there's goals and objectives that we are going to judge Mark by, then we just all need to communicate those clearly to him. Thanks.
All right, Mark, I think you got a sense that there's going to be a follow-up discussion about goals and objectives on December 15th. But with that proviso, we've now gone through everybody and an opportunity. Obviously, you submitted written materials, and thanks for that. But either to supplement what you put in writing or to react, respond, or otherwise comment on anything that's been said tonight. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you for, for all the comments tonight. I think all feedback is helpful. All feedback is good. One of the things that I did want to highlight that I did put in the written piece that I put in the packet, I'm the constant here. And I think Ms. Braccio alluded to that, the board changes, and I've got to find ways to adapt, to the board and what the board wants and what the board needs. I think this COVID environment has made it more difficult for me to do that. I don't feel, at times, and alluding to the comments that Mr. Healy made, I don't feel as confident in some of the decisions. Is this something that is mine? Is this something the board should do? So I don't, I don't feel that, that we've got, as strong of a team approach yet that I've had with other boards. And that's something I need to work on, in terms of, developing and establishing that. I think that, I think we have made some strides. I think we've done good things. Again, with COVID and staggered schedules and, and having people remote and having some people in at various times, it has made, some of the connectivity pieces difficult, but, we're working through those things. And, I do agree, about a process. If we're going to do an evaluation, we should, understand the metrics, and I should understand the metrics. So I know, where, I stand, in terms of what the board is looking for me to do. So it is a little bit weird. Like, Ms. Malinowski was not part of this review coming on this board. Mr. Kalinda's been off the board now, for many months, and, he's part of the review. So I look forward to, being reviewed, I think, as Ms. Malinowski said, in real time, and we can, set the expectations, and, I look forward to that discussion.
All right.
Marty, can I just add, if I think it would be helpful for our 12:15 discussion if Mark can also come up with a list of goals and objectives on what he would, or what he's interested in and would like to see done too, so that way we can get kind of his perspective.
Does that make sense, Mark?
Yeah, no, I think it'd really be nice if we could do some of this, and I understand the limitations of, open meeting law and everything in that, but trying to do some of these things like this publicly. I mean, I got the comments, but never had the individual conversations with most of you about the comments. A lot of the things that were in this document, I hadn't seen or could say that there was a conversation with me about until they were in the document. So, I think that, it would be good if we didn't, have to sit here and try and hash everything out, in a public meeting, and there was a little bit more preparation going into this, but I'll defer to you on that.
Well, our hands are tied by open meeting requirements. That's the problem. And even doing it, individual meetings, it becomes a seriatim open meeting. Again, I've been in the public sector for a long time, and I'm a bit taken aback by this process. Mm-hmm. But the 2018 decision by the Supreme Judicial Court is pretty clear about what it says has to be done. And one thing I learned early on is that when the top court in a jurisdiction says something, that's what you do. So that's what we do. So the one thing, Mark, that in terms of again, it's interesting to hear you say in terms of a lack of confidence about of certain areas, and whether it's COVID related or changing board related. Again, and I've said it in meetings we've had. Grab that confidence. You are the town administrator, and don't be second guessing yourself about this is an area where I need to act. Now, the flip side of that for me is that I am the contrary to a micromanager, so I'm not encouraging micromanagement. But again, communication is a powerful elixir, and taking responsibility, exercising the power that goes with the position, is I think important for you to do your job. communicating to, the ultimate executive authority in town, that being the Board of Selectmen, not for permission, but that these are the things that are being done is the critically important component of that.
Mhm.
So we could talk more about that on 12:15, but unless anyone else has anything to say, I think we can move on to our reports for the night. We all
Can I ask a
set?
question?
Yes, Sam.
To your point about the Supreme Judicial Court thing, I thought Mark made a good suggestion in his written material. Is it a problem if one or more of us actually sits down with Mark, and which I'd be glad to do, and expand on the written comments and have the conversation directly with Mark about performance feedback? It wouldn't involve other board members, and Mark would not presumably be passing that around to create open meeting law issues. And it seems to me that that could be a helpful communication, setting up expectations for the next review process.
I think that's fine, Sam. It is. There just has to be really, really high and really firm guardrails, so that it doesn't become a seriatim discussion. Not that Mr. Purple carries the ball from one of us to the other, but that somehow we communicate. Again, I was taken aback by that Wayland decision, that court decision. It's not the first court decision that I think could have been decided differently, but it makes this process an incredibly public process, and I'm very wary of with that as the dictate from the SJC to figure out ways to avoid doing what they seem to have said we have to do.
Yeah, I would point out though that I actually talked to the AG's office, and they said they're going to ignore that one. So
yeah, they can do that.
yeah, they said they were going to ignore it, and if we behave that way, they would sanction us, and then we could take it back to the SJC to get it overturned.
Did they give you a list of the things they'll ignore and the things that they're going to enforce?
Bolter was the only one that was a point of discussion. So
basically, they want us to be the guinea pig, so that they get to go back to the SJC on the issue. Great.
Yeah. So,
I'm not interested. Thank you.
Yeah, no thanks.
Marty, if I can add one thing before we move on as
Sure,
well,
Lisa.
kind of piggybacking on what you said, and it's about finding balance in allowing Mark to make the decisions or whatnot that he has to make, but also at the end of the day, Mark and we've had this conversation before. The last thing I want is to be blindsided by someone in the public that knows something that a member of this board doesn't know. So it's a matter of finding the balance. I don't necessarily view it as micromanaging as much as being kept informed. And so I just wanted to add that I think there is a way to find balance, and I don't necessarily think anyone's looking to micromanage, but at the same time, if we're not informed, then again, we look foolish to the public. So.
Yep. And like I said, and that, and my goal is to make sure that, that the board is informed, so that when somebody comes to you with a question or something like that, you're at least aware of the issue. And so, in terms of communication pieces, I'm trying to find a balance between filter and fire hose. And I think right now it's trending more towards fire hose, just until one of you or as a group screams uncle, saying, you know what, we don't need to see these things anymore. This is something that we don't. So again, we'll probably tend more towards, just passing things through and making sure that, everything is out there for the board, and all the information comes to you. And then, you can, the feedback I'll get from you as to what you want filtered. So
and I appreciate that, Mark. And there's nothing worse than, again, somebody asking a question, but you've been very good about that. It hasn't happened in a long time, but it's just, and when it happens at once, and I say, how come somebody knows something, before we do? But again, I think the lines of communication in that respect have you've kind of gone with the flow, and they've improved, and that's happening less and less than it has in the past. So I appreciate that.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other indications of comment, so I am going to move on two reports, and mine is very quick. And it's just some upcoming things. And Mark, some of this is stuff you and I have talked about. We're gonna try maybe even for December 15 to close the loop on the CSX issue for downtown. And so that hopefully, in fact, I don't see any reason not to. On December 15th, we will know definitively what the positions are of the 4 landowners and of CSX. And we can have a fulsome discussion about where that puts us in terms of making a decision on behalf of the town. Second, and again, this falls a little bit on you, Mark, to find out if we are alone. I suspect we're not in the whole cannabis world, where the marijuana, what are they called? Stores? Is that what we're calling them? Stores?
Dispensary.
What are they?
Dispensary.
Dispensary, yeah, store. The marijuana stores, the one located in Southborough has indicated that they believe that the lump sum payment as opposed to the percentage payment is illegal. And I can't imagine that they are taking that position just with Southborough. So 2 things. Number one, and again, maybe this will be on the 12:15 agenda, finding out, reaching out to other communities and finding out if in fact, I don't want Southborough to be in the position of having to decide whether or not to initiate a lawsuit on its own. I'd like to find out that we're not on an island on this thing, in terms, again, of the lump sum payment. That's number one. And number 2, whether or not it makes sense to have the marijuana store has a cannabis lawyer, and whether or not it makes sense for us to have a cannabis lawyer too. It's a very unique and very a real specialty. So that's something else we can talk about on 12:15. Number 3, you may remember I talked about the Metro West the MWRTA. I'm not even sure what all the initials stand for. And we didn't get any hands. Nobody stepped forward on this committee. I reached out to some other committees. Others have not. So at least for the time being, the MWRTA designee for the town of Southborough is going to be me. So I've never been on one of those little buses, but I'm going to learn more about them, I guess.
Congratulations.
I know, boy.
The joys of being chair.
Yeah, pat myself on the back. And then the other thing is, and again, Mark, you've got a role in this one as well, and that is to close the circle on, or at least continue discussions with St. Mark's about the project that Karen talked about at the intersection on Route 85. But the other thing is, and this might be worth having Karen come in on December 15th to talk about as well. In one of her emails back and forth with me about this, she floated the idea, and I don't know if she's floated it with St. Mark's yet, but she's at least thinking about that area between the library and the intersection, of coming up with a proposal, hopefully in conjunction with St. Mark's, that would enable to have, she calls it a pocket park, enable the town to create a sort of pocket park, which would be contiguous to the library, which, as we're extending our sidewalks, hopefully, to the library now, hopefully up towards St. Mark's and Ledge Hill, the idea of creating a park in that area as well is something that Karen is exploring, and I think is worth us talking about on 12:15. So that's it for me. Any members with reports? Ms. Braccio.
Thank you. Just a quick one. So if COVID has presented us with some interesting challenges and some good things, good and bad. And I think one of the good things is using Zoom has made our availability to members of the public to be able to follow meetings they wouldn't in the past. That being said, it has been an interesting 8 months, to say the least. So I would like this board to consider, not necessarily obviously for this meeting, but put on an agenda, Marty, to talk about updating the code of conduct policy that we currently have in place I think it can be tweaked with some minor edits. And it could be something that could be shared with board and committee members, just so we're all on the same page about the expectation of, how things are done at a public meeting. And I think that direction has to come from this board. So I would just request at a future meeting, I'm not asking necessarily for December 15th, but at a forthcoming meeting that we actually take a look at the policy. It's already there and in place, but we just update it and share it with our boards and committees. That's all.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason not to do it on the 15th. And I think it's a very good idea. So
Thank you.
Done. Anyone else? Ms. Malinowski.
Two things. I just wanted to follow up on when Brian and Carla were here with their Q1 report. They were looking for a liaison from the board to work with them on the review for probably Q2. So I just wanted to see if we could add that to a future agenda. I would definitely be interested in taking that role. And the other thing is, I would like us probably after the holiday to do some sort of Zoom with a selectman prior to town meeting. So have a few in January and February just to do some public outreach and see if there's anything, any questions or anything that can come up prior to town meeting.
I'm not quite sure I understood the second thing. Do a Zoom.
You used to do like open sessions with the selectmen.
Okay.
Office
What
hours.
did you call them? Office hours.
Oh, office hours. Okay.
I couldn't think of the phrase. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
I'm like,
okay. Now I understand.
Yeah.
I didn't
Sorry.
know what you were talking about.
But I think we should, if we can try to put a schedule together for January, and that way we give the public enough notice that we're starting those again, just to do it before town meeting.
No. That's a good idea. And we can harken back to an era when we didn't meet every week. And we could actually have office hours on those weeks when we didn't have a meeting. So
what we're doing now.
Right.
All right. Brian, do you have anything? All set? Mr. Sivers.
A quick one, liaison update. I've been working with the Board of Health, some interesting things going on there that I think we'll hear about fairly soon. Working on connecting with the fire chief to get plugged in there. My other one was IT, which is a bit in flux given Tom's departure, but I'm actually working to connect with the Municipal Technology Committee to have some discussions with them about some of the longer term issues as we've heard about this evening. So I'll work on that until IT management gets squared away a little bit here, but excellent process. And I think that it's going to be valuable to make sure we're connected from a communication standpoint, particularly for some of the places that actually don't spend a lot of time in front of the selectmen. Some of the usual suspects are fairly heavily involved and I think feel like they're communicating actively, but some of the other groups I think feel a little bit ignored. So I think this is a good way to reinforce the connection and pass messages back and forth in a way that keeps everybody on the same page. So I think it's working great from my standpoint. And we'll keep it up. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. And I said it a couple of times earlier when the tech people were here. I was blown away by what they're taking on.
Meetings. There's real
I'm sorry?
expertise there. If you listen to some of their meetings, there's real deep expertise there, which is
I could listen to their meetings and not understand anything for 2 hours. So updates like this are much more helpful for me. All right. Town administrator report.
Mr. Chairman, really quick. A couple of follow-ups of things that people have mentioned. Closing out the CX issue on 1215. Karen Galligan, speaking, of fire hoses of information, sent me another big a data dump in terms of the conversations, Mr. Healy, that you and I have been having, talking about, what if we do exercise this right-of-way agreement with CSX that we need to do to finish up the downtown. What does it mean for the property owners and giving you a visual of what exactly that's going to mean for them in terms of curb cuts, in terms of things of that nature. So we can put that all together, in a nice document for the 12/15 meeting. I do have a scheduled call with the business manager of St. Mark's, who I've been dealing with, Rob, on Thursday. And so we'll follow up on some of these things. And I don't believe my initial indication with him, my correspondence with him, that Pocket Park is on his radar yet, and that those conversations have moved forward. But I'm sure that they would be interested in looking at something like that. That parcel is seemed to be more advantageous to them for parking than it has for what Ms. Galligan may be thinking. But I'm sure that we can find some synergies there with them as well. Ms. Malinowski just brought up about this board liaison for Q2 for the finance team. Is that something that we want on 12/15? Because we've just about written the 12/15 agenda. So I just want to know if that's something that we should include as well, a discussion for that.
Yeah, that's not going to be a lengthy discussion.
No.
So yeah, we should definitely put that on for 12/15. In fact,
Okay.
I'm almost ready to designate Ms. Malinowski right now, but we didn't put it on the agenda, so I'm not going to do that.
So the one, the only other thing that I'll have that I'll mention, or one other thing with COVID, if you do follow the dashboard, you'll see that our numbers are jumping. We've gone up, 10 positive cases in 2 days. They're coming in now, not in singles. One of them came in 6 at a notification. Some of them are households, some of them are individual, but they're all over town. So there is no one, the conversations that I have with the state, or others, there's no one defining event. There's no super spreader, that we're seeing. These are just, this is just community spread, through other means. And it's not just us, it's symptomatic across the state if you're looking at the numbers right now. So, we'll continue to watch that. The one thing that I did have for this evening is, with Carol Ostrich's retirement in our office, we're trying to restructure how we're going to do things moving forward between Ms. Esposito, Ms. Hale, and myself, and this position X. And part of that is updating some job descriptions, and part of it is redefining what Ms. Ostrich's position, administrative assistant in the office, is going to look like. And so that's taking a little bit of time. And in the interim, I would like to transfer up Katie Berry, who is the ZBA administrative assistant from the building department, up into the selectman's office on a temporary basis, maintaining the 19 hours. I'm not looking to do it to the full 34. And I have had conversations with Ms. Berry as well as Ms. Lavoli. And, it appears that, there is capacity right now that she could be helpful up in our office to help to provide coverage for some of these things. And Mr. Healy pointed this out earlier. It is one of the things in the town administrative bylaw that I can do, but I do need the board's support for that to happen. I think this will give us an opportunity to evaluate what that position can be and the capacity of it. And, do we need to look at something beyond a 19-hour position? Do we need to, look at replacing, the 34 hours with 34 hours again? And what can we do outside of the selectman's office? The position already was providing services to IT, EDC, and conservation, who have no administrative assistants. So that's what I'm looking to do in the short term. We will, while Ms. Berry is transferred up in the selectman's office, we'll be paying out of our salaries. So therefore, we're not going to be paying anything out of the ZBA account. So there will be savings that we will be seeing during this time. And obviously the ZBA responsibilities will come with her. But again, on a good year, what do you have? 10, 12 cases that you do with ZBA, maybe 15. Given the COVID and that, we're not seeing those right now. So I think that additional capacity could be put to better use in our office at this point. So I'm making that request of the board.
So Mark, do you need us to take action? I told you that I thought this was an administrative function that you had the authority to undertake. And for my money, it would fall into the category of you've taken an administrative action and you've advised the board. I think, do members of the board disagree with that, the way I'm viewing it?
Sounds
I don't
like
think we need to vote on, I don't think we
No,
have
I
to
agree.
vote on him taking that administrative action.
No, that's like I said, that's fine. But chapter 27-26, section A4C of the town administrator bylaw, does give me the authority with the board's approval. So if you're all comfortable with this, then I don't know that you need a formal vote. It's up to you.
Can I just ask
Questions?
a question? Just
Sure.
a question.
Chelsea.
Yeah, thank you. So Mark, this is, you're envisioning this switch to have Miss Berry take her current workload and physically do it at the townhouse. And then, take some filler time that she may have and do some Board of Selectmen functions. Kind of like the ZBA job will be the primary focus, and that would come first. And then she would essentially backfill whatever needs to be done in the Selectmen office.
Correct. And so, like I said, I'm trying to determine what the capacity, what the needs, of the position. I mean, there's some things, and I know you and I have had conversations about, some things that we could streamline, which, I think we've done. We had sent out notifications to the board that, phone calls are no longer routed through the master phone, which sits, this phone with wings that sits at Carol's desk. Everything is routed through there and that. So that, we've created a new phone tree. You don't hear my voice anymore. We've tried to do some of those things and things that people may have just taken for granted. There's now those responsibilities have been shifted elsewhere, but there are still things that need to be done, by someone. And I think we're trying to bridge, to find out what can be shifted, what can be moved, and what really needs to sit with a position. And do we want to look at expanding those responsibilities beyond our office to, say, the treasurer's office, who was looking for some part-time help last year. And I think there was general agreement to try to provide that. So again, it gives us a little time to evaluate it, as you said, Chelsea, in real time.
Okay, thank you. And I would just ask that Ms. Lavoli kind of be involved in those conversations just to make sure that the ZBA functions are, not getting neglected at all.
Absolutely. And this is, and there's, this will happen probably, in a week to 10 days or so, so that we can make sure that it's not going to happen, effective tomorrow morning. So we'll make sure that it's a smooth transition.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Anyone else? Any questions on this? Okay. All right. Consent agenda. Items A through H. Are there any holes?
Actually, it's J, isn't it? Sorry, Marty.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jay.
Hold J, please.
Okay.
And hold H, please.
A,
Okay.
B, and D for me.
A, B, D.
No holds.
Anything
for
else?
me. No holds.
Come on, Brian.
No,
Did you find one?
no, just to be a wise guy. Yeah.
All right.
Those 2 minutes that we didn't act on last meeting, I want to hold those.
I move that we approve consent agenda items C, E, F, and G.
And I.
Second.
I think
Oh.
I too, Marty. Sorry.
Oh, and I. Nobody held I. Okay. And I.
Second.
Discussion none. Ms. Braccio,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski, Mr. Shea,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
and Mr. Healy is aye. So A, open session minutes.
Yeah, I was confused about the November 17th minutes. There's some language in lines 139 to 141 that didn't look to me like it captured what we talked about.
What were the lines, Sam?
139 to 141.
I think that's on page 3.
Mhm. I thought we discussed that.
I know we discussed it. What do you think is not reflective, Sam?
Just saying, I'm still scrolling to it here. I thought we were talking about overages. So if the overages didn't exceed 100, we don't need to be informed. If the overage was 5 to 10,000, so it wasn't the actual expenditure amount, it was the excess. I thought. As we're talking about, you thought that the line items exceeded approximately.
But the overage is noted in the first sentence in line 1.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, but it seemed to me to make it clear, you stated if you thought that the line item overage exceeds approximately blah, blah, blah. I mean, not a huge deal, but I think the language doesn't clearly define overage, even though it is in the first sentence. The language doesn't flow through to the rest. But if people are comfortable with that, I'm not make a big deal out of it.
I'm fine with it. By the same token, we could add. Would adding between 5,000 - 10,000
overage.
Overages on a line item.
Yeah.
If we put that, I mean, again.
Yeah, it's fine.
So that with that amendment, is that the only thing?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. So I move that we approve consent agenda item A with the amendment as discussed.
Second.
Discussion none. Ms. Braccio.
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Mr. Shea.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
And Mr. Healy is aye. That is unanimous as well. B.
Tree contract. This is just a question for Ms. Galligan that I'll follow up on, but I noticed that about a third of the price quotes, the high bidder was actually lower than the low bidder. It made me wonder, is it worth trying to break that out by particular tree and award the trees to the bidder who's lowest on those particular trees versus the total contract? Sometimes you can't do that, but it seems to me curious that there was such a difference between some of those bids for particular trees. So again, just a comment, and I will follow up with Ms. Galligan, but I thought that was interesting. So that was my only question.
Okay, I move to approve consent agenda item B.
Second.
Discussion none. Ms. Braccio.
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski. I think Chelsea's frozen.
She's frozen. Or asleep.
Mr. Shea.
Mr. Shea is aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
Mr. Healy is aye. And we'll wait a couple of minutes for Ms. Malinowski.
At least the tree's nice and lit up, though.
It's not blinking any longer.
No.
Oh, she's back. There she is.
Oh, the tree's out now.
Did you say aye?
She froze again.
She froze again. She woke up
Chelsea.
anyways. That's all right.
When you come back on, just say aye. Say aye quickly.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Consent agenda item D. That was held by
I did.
Mr. Stivers.
Question, are any of these licensees having a problem in terms of violations of various state or local regulations, or have they been at this point, everybody is in good standing relative to all the appropriate regulations that apply.
Yeah,
to it.
everyone, as far as I know, Mr. Stivers, everybody is in good standing. We've had no indications from any, from ABCC or from anyone else that there are any issues.
Okay, I'm fine then.
All right, I move to approve consent agenda item D.
Second.
Discussion none. Ms. Braccio.
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Mr. Shea.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
And Mr. Healy is aye. Next up is H.
I held that. I had one change for executive session minutes. So I think we need to talk about it during an executive session.
So, Mr. Chairman, should we, so the process has been, if somebody wants to hold and we want to discuss, then we can put those on for executive session for the next meeting. So would you like me to schedule that for
Yep.
12:15? Okay.
12:15. You're right. We're filling out that agenda. We don't have to have a meeting next Tuesday.
All set?
As long as there's no meeting on the 22nd, that's all I can.
Today's free on the 25th, probably, right?
All right. And
I held J.
Okay.
and I was approved. So J is the last item. Ms. Braccio.
So I just wanted to follow up before we vote on this, that there's going to be outreach done to the abutters before this takes place. We all know from past history that if a backhoe shows up, people are going to wonder what's going on. And I would hope that that was discussed prior, and I would just hope that that's going to take place before this authorization takes place. I'm trying to be careful what I say.
Good point.
Yeah. So again, and in order of transparency, I guess, is the easiest thing.
Well, at our, am I unmuted? I am. Okay. At our, what was the date? Was it our November 24th? It was either at our November 17th or our November 24th meeting. There was an executive session item agenda that was listed in the public record to discuss the property at 21 Highland Street.
Yep.
This is a step to provide additional information about that property for the Board of Selectmen and for the Capital Committee. And it's nothing more, nothing less than that. It's just an informational gathering tool. And what is the expectation, Mark, that DPW will just explain that's all that is going on with the process there, is that they are, with perk test, gathering information on the nature of the property?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the essence of it, but I think Ms. Braccio is alluding to that just leads to more questions. I mean, I get the point, but I mean, we probably are going to get questions from abutters, and then I may get questions, and I think her point is, how do we answer them?
And I think in a prior discussion, one of the intents was to be proactive on this. Again, I'm trying to be careful what I say. Maybe I'm recollecting wrong. I don't know if any.
So if I may, I thought that's why we were discussing it tonight, was so that we were not doing it around a holiday. And we're going to notify the abutters that we were looking to perk that site. That was my recollection of it.
And deliver the message that Marty just delivered, that we're looking for more information about the property.
Right. But so what I'm asking is that going to take place before we actually start a backhoe showing up there?
I would hope so.
I think
I would hope so. So can we amend the motion on this to say authorize percolation tests to be conducted at 21 Highland Street after notification to abutters has been made?
Works for me.
That's fine with me.
So in terms of process, maybe this is a question for Mark. How does that work for a notification?
So I think we would just, just put together, a quick abutters list and just, put together a quick notification that we can send out to all the abutters. And, the electronic is best, but it's probably going to be something that's either going to be hand delivered, just for timing issues. I know we talked about, the colder the weather, the harder it is to do work tests. So I think it's something we're going to have to do fairly quickly to get this out so that we can make sure that we're not doing a test that isn't going to give us the results we're looking for.
Okay. That was my only clarifying point to that.
Can we just see that letter before it goes out?
Sure. Do you want something to send to the board? Do you want to designate, one person just to take a look at this before it's sent?
I think Chelsea just volunteered.
Sound like it to me.
I'm happy to look at it.
I don't need to see it.
I heard her volunteer for the MWRTA.
I was going to say that. I think Marty missed his opportunity.
I think
I
that's
should've
during kindergarten teaching time, those meetings.
Yeah.
Take the kids on the bus.
Yeah, I think anytime anyone gets frozen, I'm going to appoint them to
Yeah, when the screen froze, it was great.
Okay, so
I made a
was
motion.
made and seconded.
Seconded, yeah.
Ms. Braccio,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski, Mr. Shea,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
and Mr. Healy is aye. We are done with the consent agenda. Six A. My understanding is, Ms. Braccio, we're going to continue that one.
Yes, we're going to continue that one till the 15th, just so we could get some updated timeline information, as well as hopefully on the 15th as well, we'll be able to approve the zoning document that is forthcoming from Ms. Barrett. So it seemed sense to do it all in once instead of, again, because that document is attached within what you have. So
Okay, any questions about that before we move? No, all right, I'll move to continue item 6A to the 12:15 agenda, of course.
of course.
Second.
Discussion, none. Ms. Braccio,
Aye, thank you.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Shea,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy is aye. That's unanimous as well. And is this you, Ms. Malinowski, or Ms. Braccio to amend the mortgage and rent relief program?
Yeah, so this is me. So as you recall, I'm reviewing all of the applications as a representative of the Housing Trust because that's our backup funding if the CARES Act funding falls through. And I'm happy to report that we've received several applications that are at various stages of completion. But I'm hopeful that we'll have the majority done by the end of this week. Applications were due by today. And as a result of the review of those applications, I'm asking this board to approve an increase to the program based on some of the applications that have been received to allow for 6 months, up to 6 months of rent and mortgage relief versus the 2 that's currently in the program. That this would not go over the threshold that we set at $25,000. We're not even close to the 25,000. So I would like to be able to provide as much relief as possible for the applications that we have received.
All right, that seems perfectly reasonable. Any discussion before there's a motion? None. All right, I'll move that we amend the mortgage and rent relief program guidelines as described by Ms. Malinowski.
Second.
Discussion, none. Ms. Braccio.
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Mr. Shea.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
Mr. Healy is aye, also approved unanimously. Update and
Thank you.
discussion.
And-
I'm sorry, Chelsea, go ahead.
Sorry, Marty. Mr. Purple, do you mind having that updated on the website to reflect the new guidelines.
Yes, I will. If you want to, do you want to make the change, or do you want me to make the change and then we can just update that? Or
I think it's in the packet.
okay,
The
all
red
right.
line's in the packet.
Okay,
I
perfect.
don't have it. Okay, thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
C, update and discussion, fiscal year 21 goals. Ms. Braccio is shaking her head. I'm not sure why.
I
I
got
have a few
nothing.
comments.
I'm sorry?
I have a few comments, I said, but
Okay. Yeah, this was, I don't even remember whose request it was, but someone requested that we put this on, and it seemed reasonable that, again, I've been doing the updates based on the best information I have about whether or not, again, obviously once something is in progress, that means something has been done on it. Trying to stay as up to speed with it as I can. But I think having a discussion about it periodically is also a good idea. So with that, Mr. Stivers.
I had a couple of structural suggestions here. I mean, it seems to me it might be useful to resort the things and put the completed items at the bottom of the page in one group, so we got a better visual track of what's been completed, and maybe move the in progress stuff to the top of each group so people can sort of see, what's in progress in one lump. And then in terms of the other things, the BOS budget liaisons is completed, for example, I think. And I wonder if the budget software implementation is completed. I think it's pretty close if it's not. And back to an earlier comment that we had tonight, why don't we just create a biking committee? That's something we could do pretty quickly, I think, and knock that one off. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't move forward with that one for a variety of reasons here.
Is Marty going to volunteer for that one?
I was going to chair it, I think.
Isn't there a bylaw that's advisory that can't be on other committees? Anyway,
Yeah.
I will put the bike committee on. It's interesting. I was over at Landry's a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking with them because they sponsor stuff in various towns, and I was trying to entice them to be or find out what it would take to entice them to be a sponsor of some sort of bike related activity in Southborough. So obviously a committee is a logical extension of that. So I'll put it on. I'm not going to put it on for the 15th, but I'll put it on for one of our January agendas.
Related to that, not directly on the goals, is I think it would be useful to get our golf committee reconstituted as well, because that one's actually coming up for some things that they might be interested in doing next spring. So, again, that would be, I think, a useful thing to get on the agenda at some point as well. And then I think
let me again, I'm happy to put that on a January agenda to discuss. It's interesting, Mark. Do we have an update? I mean, I've been amazed, driving by the golf course. Man, the cold weather warriors. Some of the days have been nice. But have you been out there, Brian?
I haven't been out there in a little while, actually. But fortunately, the weather has, despite one spell of some cold days, and obviously the snow that we had, the weather has really held out nicely for golf this fall. So,
do we have a final number yet, Mark, for what the receipts were for the year and what the town's revolving fund is going to be as a result of that?
I don't have the final numbers yet. Their last day of operations was the day after Thanksgiving, November 27th, and now they've given way to the Firefighters Association. The parking lot is now filled with Christmas trees. So the sale is going on back there now. They did, as I had predicted, break the $400,000 mark in terms of receipts. And the way that their contract was structured for this year, the town was to receive 10% of anything above $200,000. So we'll have approximately, between probably $20,000 and $22,000 that will be coming to the town that will go into the golf revolving fund to be spent on items related to the course. So, I know that there's been conversations with the management company about trying to extend irrigation, which is more than 22,000. I know there's been conversations, ever since the course has been built about trying to pave the access road and the parking lot. And there are some stormwater issues, and conservation permits that need to be reviewed to see if that is a possibility as well. And, and then there are other issues, how can we, do some netting needed to be put up on that brand new first tee so people can stop slicing balls into the building. And we can try and preserve the new siding and everything else that was just done by Exhibit.
That sounds like Mr. Shea.
Or
hey, no way. I save all my slicing for the later holes on the course. I make sure I get off the first tee straight.
The one thing I'm more concerned about from Mr. Shea is the balls that actually slice over the clubhouse and threaten the vehicles behind public safety. And so, you'll notice that a lot of the cars are now parked down one end where, it'd be great for less visibility to park down the other end. But I think that the employees are not parking their personal vehicles where, they come into range with golf balls. So, we may need to look at some netting and things like that in those areas. But
coming full circle, I mean, they're particularly, I don't know if it's going to be a $400,000 year next year. I mean, this was unusual because of COVID, but that clearly is a popular course.
Yep.
It's more popular than it's been in past years, and it is going to generate money over time. And a golf committee is going to have some work to do to decide exactly the sort of questions you're talking about, Mark.
And just two comments. Yes, I think that was a silver lining of the pandemic, as golf was one of the first things people were able to open back up. But in talking with the management company, they're seeing new people. They're seeing people they haven't seen before and getting a lot of people interested in the course. Plus, now that the course is a fully functional and you've got a full 9 holes, with no construction in the way, they can start having the high school teams back again. You got to remember, this $400,000 season had nothing to do with any revenues from the schools.
Yeah.
So I really think that, they could build on what they've done this year and opening it up to a lot of new people and getting people excited about, coming out and playing the course.
So an early January agenda item, Mr. Stivers. Fair enough?
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on the goals? I will, again, just because we've had a meeting every week, I need to do some updating on the goals sheet. And I know, Mr. Stivers, you've been trying to get me to change my format since day one, but I will take another look at it.
I love the format, to be honest with you.
All right. So last item on the agenda, I take that back. Last item on 6 is discussion items for legislative update. Mark, is the simplest way to take care of that, rather than have a discussion about it, is to just give a date firm to get additional items to you? It strikes me that we don't need to. I mean, if somebody thinks it's a good idea to have it as a discussion item, then we'll put it on the agenda.
Yeah, no, I think Mr. I'll rat out Mr. Stivers. He's already sent some comments and things that looking for updates from the legislature.
I'm shocked.
It was only 2 paragraphs. It really wasn't bad.
And I sent a red line too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some obvious things. You've got the fiscal 21 budget that is the House and Senate are trying to discuss what to do. But in 2 months from now, we're supposed to be getting the governor's proposal for fiscal 22. What should we be looking at for our budget? You've seen some information coming forward. I think the comment's been made that that's how this administration on Beacon Hill is doing things. These grant notices. Hey, we're going to put some money into this. We're going to put some things into that. So, trying to keep up with that. What else is coming down the pike? Things like that. But if there's specific items, I think that we can forward them to the board, because quite honestly, even if the board doesn't agree as a whole, I still think that, Mr. Shea, if he's got a question, he's going to ask it while the legislators are there. We can just make them prepared. Here is the universe of what the board is interested in. So at least be prepared to comment on these things.
And Mark, it came up in the discussion with Catherine from the Trails Committee. I would send out to the committees and say, are there some items, we don't have to include all of them, but are there some items that either part of their goals, initiatives, issues that they've confronted that they would like us to raise with our state rep, state senator?
Okay.
And let's try to have a hard stop of, if we give them a week's notice, that should be fine. So why don't we have a hard stop of anything has to be to you by Monday, and then we can get it to the staffs by Tuesday at the latest. They'll have a week to take a look at it whenever they want.
Okay, sounds good.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're done with 6, 7, public comment. Has anyone hung in with us?
We have discouraged the entire public. Nobody's left.
Mr. Stivers, do you have any public comment?
Yeah. I'm disappointed. I had blocked another 2 hours for this meeting. What are we going to do?
Well, Sam, I think that's what it is. I think people, figured they'd just come back at, 10 o'clock and we'd still be here.
I think the goal of the board should be that we should be done before the Malinowski Christmas tree goes off.
Yeah.
I think, Chelsea, you had said what, 10 o'clock?
Okay.
10 o'clock.
Good.
That should be the goal.
Yeah.
Well, someone should already have moved to adjourn. I'm not sure what the delay is.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, none. Ms. Braccio,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Shea,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy is aye. We are adjourned.
See you in 2 weeks.
All right,
Thanks,
2
everyone.
weeks.
2
Good night.
weeks. Good
No
night, everybody.
special meetings.
I'll be here next week.
Good night.